Hey everybody. I know a couple people had requested that we read this chapter together, so it is really due Tuesday, and this is your chance to read it together. Darkening Light, Who Can You Tell? Which is really a reminder that now that Raven knows she's Jewish, she's got to figure out, like, do I keep this secret to myself? Probably the best idea. Or do I tell my best friend? Do I tell the guy I like? Like, what am I going to do with this information? And Darkening Light doesn't sound very welcoming. So I wonder. And as you keep going, look at that picture. Darkening Light, who can you tell? And then there's gates burning. Oh my gosh. So crazy. So, I mean, the gates are a reminder of her dreams, right? She always dreams of gates that open onto a garden, which is like a part of the Jewish religion. And then also, it looks like this book is burning. What's going to happen? Nothing good. I feel this is foreshadowing. Okay, sorrow. Over the next few days, there was so much looting that the streets became too dangerous to walk. My grandfather made a new lock for our door and nailed the window shut. We did not go to the market or the dye vats or to the well in the plaza. We took in the animals at night, letting the chickens lay their eggs on our rugs, the sheep shelter under our table, allowing the pigs to sleep beside the stove. All except for Deanie, whom I sneaked up to my room at night. Deanie was very well behaved and quiet. He slept on a pile of rags, curled up in a corner. I could hear him snuffling in his dreams while I fell asleep, happy enough just to be near me. I wished I could sleep as deeply as he did. I wished I could be so easily comforted. One evening, I went out for a walk with Catalina. We were both restless and we missed each other. Doesn't this just remind you of lockdown people? Come on. Not the animals sleeping in your house, but just like wanting to see your friends, being shut away from everything because it just feels like dangerous in some way. I mean, theirs is physical. People are like burning things down and stealing. Um, but in this case, it's more like, for coronavirus, it was the germs. We were both restless and we missed each other. Maybe I was wrong about the distance between us. Maybe we could be friends. Crow and Raven, the two girls who look like sisters with the same long black hair. Two girls who believed they could be anything they wanted to be. Remember when we used to pretend we were donkeys and run through the field? I asked. We were silly children, Catalina said. You were faster than I was, I said. I was. Catalina looked pleased. In truth, I always slowed down at the end of every race. I was the sort of donkey who didn't need to win. Maybe that was why, whenever Catalina wanted something of mine, I was only too happy to give it to her. Which, I mean, here we're really building a case for Catalina as this like really needy, selfish character, and it's always been that way, but Raven kind of ignored it. But you were prettier, Catalina said. She had slipped her arm away from mine. A donkey is a donkey, I laughed. None are pretty. That may be, Catalina said, but some birds are called ravens and others are called crows. We are too old to pretend any more. Catalina stopped and gave me a hard stare. I don't like the way you look at Andres, she said. I wanted to say I can't help myself, but I didn't say anything. Stay away from him, Catalina said. I won't tell you again. Ooh, the sassiness. But that's Catalina, you know her. Thinking she can claim somebody. And the jealousy. She wishes she was as beautiful as Raven. One morning when we woke up, we found that a window had been pried open. Someone had broken in. My grandmother checked and made sure that her greatest treasure, her silver candlesticks, were still there. She searched through the rest of our belongings. All the robber seemed to have taken was food: olives, flour, a jar of honey. People were afraid to go to the shops or even to work in their own fields. These days, it was not safe for a woman to venture to the market alone, lest she be taken by soldiers and questioned about her friends and neighbors. My grandmother decided that from that day forward, she would leave a basket of food in the yard for anyone who might be hungry. After we'd set some bread and feta cheese for passers-by, my grandmother turned to me and asked where my pearls were. Could they have been stolen? I'm sure they're here, I said. I went to my room and pretended to search for them, then returned and told my grandmother I had found my necklace stored in a box where I kept trinkets. Ooh, she's lying to grandma. Because remember, the last time we saw this necklace, it was on Catalina's neck because she was asking for it. You should have put them on, my grandmother said. They would be safe around your neck. I said that the weather had been so hot I couldn't bear the feel of anything against my skin. My grandmother narrowed her eyes. Pearls come from the sea. They're always cool. My grandmother wasn't an easy person to lie to. Still, I had begun, as terrible as it felt. I had to carry on. I'll wear them to dinner, I told my grandmother. I went to Catalina's house right away, even though I dreaded seeing her. I couldn't believe I'd given something so precious away. I knocked again and again, but no one responded. I thought I heard voices from inside the house. Finally, I called out to Catalina's name. It took a long time for her to come to see who was there. See, and this is really sus because in this lockdown, everyone's home. Nobody's out roaming the streets. Catalina's not out roaming the streets, so they're totally hiding from her. So, a raven comes calling on a crow, she said. I need the pearls back, I told her. My grandmother asked me where they were. You gave them to me, Catalina said. Catalina stood behind the open door. There were little black flies in the air, so tiny it wasn't possible to see them. All the same, they bit. Even the chickens in Catalina's yard were seeking refuge under the house. I know, I said, but now I need them. You made me take them. You told me to. I looked in Catalina's eyes. I had known her so long, my whole life, and I never noticed they were green. Green is significant here. We talked about color symbolism and how like blue is like a sad color, right? Her Abra's always making things that are blue, and she's a woman who's still sad, right, about the loss of her love. And here, Green had met before hope, but Catalina's not a hopeful person. She's a jealous person. The green-eyed monster is like a saying that we have, and that's to refer to somebody who's jealous of others. And she is certainly a green-eyed monster if we ever saw one. I need them back, I told her, hoping my voice would sound stronger than I was. There was a pause, and then Catalina said, I need them more. Andres must have heard us talking. He came outside and called my name joyfully. He said the word Estrella as though it meant beautiful and you belong to me and shining star. I saw the look on Catalina's face. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was at fault. Estrella is leaving, Catalina said to Andres. I need the necklace, I told Catalina. The way she looked at me was with the face of a different Catalina than the one I had known. Something inside me started pounding, as though I had a dove trapped inside my chest. Well, it's not yours anymore. Catalina went inside and slammed the door. Andres and I stood there. Why is she so angry? He asked. I told him about the pearls, even though I knew it was something more. Catalina was mad that I was me and she was herself. She was mad that Andres was standing here talking to me, that he'd said my name as though it were a secret we shared. There was nothing I could do about Catalina. I thought my grandmother might have been right in what she once told me. You think you know somebody, but what do you know? Only what they want to show you. Remember, it's what's inside that matters. Catalina called from the house for Andres to come in for dinner. Wait here, he told me. Andres went in, and when he returned, he had my pearls. I put out my hand, but instead, he looped the pearls around my throat and fastened them. Andres walked me home. My heart was beating against my chest so hard it was as if someone were throwing stones at me. I felt that anything could happen, anything at all. And so here we see like the way he says her name, he's taking time to spend time with her. She had a problem, he just solved it. He got those pearls back for her. And he didn't just hand them to her, he put them on her neck, which is a very like familiar kind of thing to do. You don't just have anybody do that for you. So I wonder what's going to happen. Andres did not look happy, and he did not walk close to me. What? What's he mad about? Finally, I asked what was wrong. When I went inside to get your pearls, Catalina told me you're in love with someone, Andres said. Oh my goodness, this Catalina spreading stories. Maybe I am. She said it was someone named Philippe who worked at the dye vats. She said you wanted the pearls back so badly because he gave them to you. Please, like a guy who works at the dye vats is going to have enough money saved up to buy her pearls. Ha ha. Like, get a clue, Andres. My grandparents gave me these pearls, and that boy she's talking about, I don't even know him. He's not the one. I said it so Andres would know the truth. Yes, she loves you, Dodo. She loves you. Andres took my hand and I let him. I tried to think about water in a bowl, about a river that is always moving and changing, about a garden that had 10 gates, but all I could think of was him. We kissed beside the fence in a way that left me dizzy. We laughed at the way we felt, at how dizzy we both were. We kissed again to make sure that the way we felt inside was real, and it was. Don't let your grandfather promise you to anyone, Andres said. My grandfather doesn't make my choices. It was a cool night, but I was burning. I felt the way I did when my mother taught me the whirling dance, the one only men are supposed to do, the mystic dance that makes the garden bright inside your head. Andres laughed. Then don't promise yourself to anyone, just to me. We don't have to tell if you don't want to. It will be a promise for us alone to share. How could I make a promise when I knew how Catalina felt about Andres? Still, how could I give him up? What about Catalina? I finally asked. I thought you were going to marry her. That was never going to happen. Not with her. He's putting his foot down. He has chosen Raven. And Raven, how could she give up on Drace? One, he's not an object. Two, if he was, look what happened with the pearls. She took the pearls and wouldn't give them back. I remembered what my mother had told me about the first time she saw my father. How when he turned around to look at her, she felt she'd been slapped. How she tried to stop the way she felt about him. How she pretended she didn't care until she made herself sick to her stomach. Once she had seen him, it was as though she had swallowed 1,000 knives. She tried not to feel it, but every time she saw him, there was that knife. I could feel it now stabbing me in the center of my chest. Maybe it was love, or maybe I was pierced by the look on Catalina's face as she watched us from her yard. Oh my God, what was she doing? She was watching from the yard? Sneaky. She'd come back outside after Andres had left with me, and she was still there, staring. She'd been watching all along. So, everyone, she saw that kiss. She saw that conversation. Oh my goodness. I wish she hadn't seen us. I wished we were strangers. I wished I had met Andres hundreds of miles away from Encalaflora. No wonder Catalina's feelings about me had turned into dark night thoughts. Catalina had no idea who I was. I was Esther, in love with her cousin and never once saying a word about it. Esther, the girl with a secret life. Esther, who had seen Catalina stealing silver and linen. I told Andres I could not promise myself to him so easily. I told him that because it was less difficult than telling him the truth. I wasn't certain I deserved him. Girl, you deserve him. She's talking about being Jewish and the lies, like keeping the secret from him. Oh my goodness. Okay. That night, I couldn't eat my dinner, and later, I couldn't sleep. I wondered how Andres would react if he knew I was a hidden Jew, not a Christian as he was. By law, we could not marry. We could not even talk or share a meal. If we dared to do so, it was heresy, the worst offense imaginable, right? A crime committed against the Catholic Church. And at that point, like if the church finds out, they'll burn you. I unclasped the pearls and put them in my trinket box where I kept little treasures, mostly things Catalina and I had collected when we went into the hills. There were blue bird feathers, pressed flowers, a note Catalina had written me on my last birthday with a silly poem that said we were like two trees growing in the same garden. I put the treasure box under the pallet on my bed. I slept on it. At first, it was lumpy, and I was too aware of it to sleep well. But after a few nights, I didn't feel it at all, and by the next week, I forgot anything was there. The riots in the plaza had quieted down. People came and went again to the fields, to the market, to the well, where the water came directly from heaven. Let's pause for a second. The riots had quieted down. For some people. But, let's not forget that tons of people have been arrested at this point. Tons of people are going to burn once they get, judged by the court as guilty. Tons of families have now been split up from their children. It has quieted down for some people in the town, but not everyone. Some other families are still going through this pain. So she's got a little bit of distance still, right, from this whole issue of, hey, we might get caught as secretly being Jewish. But, you can put as much distance between you want. Doesn't mean it's not coming for you. Still, in my house, we were uneasy. One day, my mother spread her cards out on a table to see what our future might hold. Right away, she made a face. She didn't like what she saw before us. It's a bad time to be in the world, she said. My mother tied a piece of red yarn around my arm, under my clothing for luck, she said. It was a secret amulet, a protection. She then tied the red thread around her own arm as well. She reshuffled the cards again and laid them out once more. The letters were all the same. Something's about to happen, my mother told me. I didn't like how upset she seemed, so I tried to make light of what the cards told her. Something's always about to happen, I said. This will be different. It will start with one sorrow and then build into 1,000. There will be so many sorrows. They will be like the stars in the sky. Oof. What an image, right? Infinite amount of sorrows. I kept looking for an omen, a sign, but our lives went on as usual. The world began to feel normal again. No burnings, no arrest, just summer afternoons and deep blue evenings. And then one bright day, I heard a nightingale in the fields. It was noontime, not the hour for such things. My mother had told me that birds and animals know the future before we do. They try to warn us, but we just don't listen. I ran outside to try to chase the nightingale away, but I couldn't spy it. It just kept singing a morning song. And notice that morning here is spelled differently than we normally see it because it means to mourn, to grieve, to be sad about the loss of something. My mother came outside and stood behind me. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Now we begin, she said. Soon enough, a Muslim boy appeared in our yard. Other than my mother, most people from our neighborhood would not go to the Muslim quarter. Perhaps some might venture to the shops, or if they were very ill, they might visit the doctor. As for the Muslims, they did not come to our part of town. But there was the boy in our yard. He was the one we had seen doing yard work at the doctor's house. The boy looked nervous. He held two very large wooden boxes. I wondered if they were treasure boxes. I wondered if this was a good omen that might prove my mother's cards wrong. When my grandmother spied the boy, she hurried into the yard yelling, trying to chase him away. The boy stood his ground and yelled back at her in Arabic and Spanish, but neither understood the other. My mother came running out of the house. She shushed my grandmother, something she never did, and she listened to the boy. My mother's hair was loose and her feet were bare, and the boy looked surprised. Out of respect, he looked down at the dirt when he spoke. I could now hear there were chickens clucking like mad inside the boxes. So here's the thing, in Muslim culture, women always must have their hair covered once they become an actual woman, right? Like once a girl gets her period. And so it's like disrespectful for a young man to look on women if their hair is uncovered, because your hair is a part of you that's like really attractive and pretty and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to pause here because it looks like I'm running out of space. So let's see if I can get Screencastify to stop.